Ever find yourself wondering why you react the way you do in your relationships? Well, today we're going to do something interesting. We're going to pull on some of those invisible threads from our past and see exactly how they're shaping our lives right here, right now. Okay, picture this. You send a text to someone important. You see those two little check marks, it's been read, and then nothing, just silence. If your heart drops and your mind immediately spirals into the worst case scenario, that awful gut punch feeling, well, that feeling actually has a name. Yeah, we're talking about the sting of rejection. And, for some of us, that sting feels less like a pinprick and more like a venomous bite. It's something that can genuinely shape our entire social world. So what the experts call this is rejection sensitivity. And it's basically this tendency to anxiously expect, readily perceive, and, overreact to social rejection. Think of it like this. Your brain is kind of on high alert for rejection 24/7. You don't just dislike being rejected, you actively expect it. You might even see it in totally neutral situations, and you react hard when you think it's happening. And, this is way more than just some minor personality quirk. I mean, look at what it's linked to. High rejection sensitivity is a really strong predictor for some serious stuff. We're talking loneliness, anxiety, depression, and really low self-esteem. It can even cause people to have hostile, aggressive reactions or to just withdraw from others completely. And the irony is, it ends up disrupting the very relationships we're so terrified of losing in the first place. So this begs a huge question, right? Why are some of us so much more sensitive to rejection than others? Are we just born this way, or is it something we learn? Well, to figure that out, we have to go back. I mean, way back, all the way to our very first relationships. And that journey back in time brings us straight to something called attachment theory. This is pretty much the bedrock for understanding why we connect with other people in the ways that we do. So the guy who started it all, John Bowlby, came up with this idea that was actually pretty radical at the time. He said that our need to form these really strong emotional bonds, it's not just a nice feeling. No, it's a deep-seated survival instinct. He realized that just like other animals, human babies are literally hardwired to run to a parent for safety whenever they feel scared or threatened. And maybe his most important idea is this concept of the secure base. Just imagine a little kid at a playground, right? The secure base is that parent or caregiver sitting on the bench, someone who's reliably there. Because that child knows they have a safe harbor to return to, they feel confident enough to run off, explore, maybe take a little tumble, and know they can always come back for comfort. This right here is the absolute foundation for healthy development. And the difference this one thing makes, it's absolutely huge. On one hand, with a secure base, a child learns how to trust. They learn to manage their emotions, and they feel free to go out and explore the world. But without that secure base, well, that's a different story. They can become hesitant, struggle when they're upset, and develop this deep-seated mistrust in other people that can stick with them for their entire life. But what happens when that system breaks, when that ideal scenario gets fractured? Well, that's where things get complicated. This is where childhood trauma enters the picture, and it can disrupt the very foundation of how we learn to connect with people. Think about it. The person who is supposed to be your source of safety, what if they become a source of fear? Or they're just completely unpredictable? Things like abuse or neglect, they create this deep internal conflict. And what this does is it shapes what psychologists call our internal working models. That's basically the subconscious rulebook we carry around in our heads about how relationships are supposed to work. And if our early experiences were painful, our rulebook might say, people will probably hurt you. People will leave you. You can't rely on anyone. Okay, so these early experiences don't just fade away. They actually solidify into clear patterns in our adult lives. Let's break down the 4 main attachment styles that can come out of all this. All right, so this grid lays it all out really nicely. It's all based on 2 big things, how you see yourself and how you see other people. So let's start in the top left. If you generally have a positive view of yourself and others, you're likely what we call secure. You're cool with intimacy, you're cool with being on your own. Now move to the top right. Positive view of self, but a negative view of others? That's often dismissing avoidant. These are the super independent folks who might push intimacy away. Okay, bottom left. This time it's a negative view of yourself, but you see others positively. This is the preoccupied anxious style. You really crave that closeness, but you're always worried you're not good enough to keep it. And last, the bottom right, a negative view of both yourself and others. This is called fearful avoidant. And it's a tough spot to be in because you want intimacy, but you're also deeply afraid of it. Okay, so now we have these attachment styles, all shaped by our past. But let's bring it back to the beginning. How does any of this connect to that panicky feeling you get from an unread text message? Well, let's look at the science. So, back in 2012, a study in Europe's Journal of Psychology decided to figure this out. The researchers wanted to connect these exact dots to see if there was a real, measurable link between someone's attachment style and how sensitive they were to rejection. And to do that, they surveyed about 125 university students. They basically measured their relationship patterns and their emotional reactions to different scenarios. And at first, the results were kind of what you'd expect. They found a clear link. The more anxious someone's attachment style was, the higher their rejection sensitivity. But the story is actually a little more complex than that. They dug a bit deeper. And this is where it gets really fascinating. This is the key finding. It turns out an anxious attachment style doesn't just lead straight to rejection sensitivity. No, there's a middle step, or rather, two middle steps. That anxious style first leads to lower self-esteem and a higher tendency to worry. And it's those two things, the low self-worth and the constant worry, that are the real culprits. They're what directly cause the high rejection sensitivity. So to put it simply, our anxious past makes us feel bad about ourselves and worry all the time. And that is what sets our brain up to expect and overreact to rejection. So after all that, what's the big takeaway? It's that our past doesn't just, influence our present. It's more like it gives us a blueprint for it. Yeah, this relational blueprint drawn up in our earliest years, it pretty much sets our default expectations for love and connection. It dictates things like how easily we trust someone, how close we're willing to get, and just how deeply we fear being abandoned. And the important thing here is this isn't about blaming anyone or anything. It's just about understanding the pattern. And that really brings us to the final and maybe most important question for you to think about. Once you know your own blueprint, how might you start to read your relationships differently? Because that sting of panic from an unread message, maybe it isn't just about that one text. Maybe it's about a story that started a very, very long time ago.